So this video is a little different. You may be able to tell that from the title, assuming that you looked. It's called 5 Dead Friends, The Dangers of Horses. And I will tell you that most of the videos I make, I try to inject a little humor in. I sort of can't help myself. It's my nature. This one's serious. This is one I've been meaning to make for a long time, but found very hard to make. And I will tell you that I made it because I think it's important. And if you've watched many of my videos, I don't typically say, hey, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. Folks, do what you like. But with this particular video, if you can pass it on and share it to people, my purpose here is maybe to keep somebody else safe and healthy. Because this deals with 5 folks that I knew pretty well who are no longer with us, because horses are inherently dangerous. Love them as much as you want, enjoy them as much as you want, but they are a dangerous animal without even meaning to be. There was not one horse involved in the scenarios I'm going to play out who really meant to hurt anybody. They don't need to try to hurt you to do a lot of harm. So the reason I'm making this video about the 5 friends that I've known in my lifetime who were killed by horses is because I don't want it to become 6. I don't want it to be somebody that I know. I don't want it to be one of you folks who have become long distance friends at least. So what I'm going to do is play out the scenarios that occurred. I think it would be unseemly for me to critique anything that anybody did. So you're not going to hear any judgment from me. I find it frankly a little offensive sometimes when people will say have a video and they'll play back something that happened in an instant and break it down nanosecond by nanosecond and say, here's what this person could have done differently. I have no doubt that each and every one of you will come up with ways that the scenarios I play out, with maybe 2 exceptions, could have been avoided. That's important for you to do. I'm not going to do it for you. Use your own judgment and think about this, please. So, to all my friends out there, this is a story of 5 dead friends, how they died, and I hope the price they paid somehow can keep somebody else from having to pay it. The first time I lost a friend, I was only about 16. And one thing I'm going to do is be as careful as I can not to identify people. But I want to tell the story the way I knew it. This was a young guy. I was about 16, 17 maybe. This boy was 3 or 4 years younger, and there was a whole sort of a pack of us, young guys, anywhere from 15 or 16 to 19, and he was on the youngest side of that. He was 13 or 14. And we were all starting horses and bringing our own horses along, and his family thought it would be a good thing if he took part in that. He very much wanted to, and they bought him a nice young horse. Not a millionaire horse, but a good, solid young horse, a 2-year-old. And they were coaching him through how to get the horse started. One day, he did what I did when I was his age, and that is I went out and I would go out and saddle my own young horse and work on it with nobody really overseeing me. So that's what this young fella did. And a neighbor saw the following happen. As he rode the horse around, he was trotting, maybe breaking into a lope around this large, nice, flat pasture field they had. And the saddle shifted, and it rolled to the side far enough there was no way for him to stay on, and he cut loose, dropped onto the ground, and being an active young guy, immediately sprang up to his knees. The colt was startled by all of this and began kicking at the saddle. One of those kicks hit this young fellow right here. Frankly, though we can talk about helmets, or you can think about helmets, this was one example where I don't think a helmet would have helped. Long story short, he goes to the hospital. He's in intensive care. I think I've told you that my dad was a doctor. We didn't realize, the rest of the guys, how bad this was. My dad routinely, if somebody that we knew was hurt, when he was in the hospital, he would stop in and visit him and look in on him. So he, being a doctor, had access to the intensive care unit, went in, came home, and I said, well, how's it going? How bad is it? And when will he be home? And my dad looked at me, and I can still see the look in his eyes. And he said, son, your friend's not coming home. And he didn't. And that was a marker in my life. And it informed me that even though I was going to take chances, I knew full well the price of those chances and what could happen if things really went wrong. And I can also vividly remember, I don't think there was one of us among the contemporary guys that went to the funeral, which in accordance with the way things are done in our region was open casket. We saw this young guy that we knew lying there, and there wasn't one of us didn't see ourselves in the casket with him. So think about that one, and certainly think about things that could have been done differently. Don't judge, but do use that to keep yourself, your kids, the people you care about safe. Second person was a few years later, probably 5 years later, wife of a friend, experienced horsewoman. They were in the business of buying and selling horses. They had a horse at a sale, and somebody said, hey, would you jump on that horse and just ride him around before you take him in the sale ring? Sure. They're out in the parking lot, big gravel parking lot. This lady gets a leg up. She's trotting the horse around. Horse is doing fine. Horse had no problems that they were aware of. The buyer says, does he jump? Well, yeah, he'll jump. And my friend set up a pair of buckets with a stick across them. And this horse, who apparently would jump anything, was directed by his wife to jump that makeshift jump in a halter, bareback, in a gravel parking lot. And he did nothing particularly bad, but he either refused or sidestepped. Again, I was not there. She went down, no helmet, struck her head, lived about 3 days. So there's another scenario for you. Ways that things can go wrong. Things that we all, let's just call it, things that we all maybe get away with, but maybe we ought to say, let's not concentrate on what we can get away with. Let's concentrate on what we should do. Third scenario is perhaps the most perplexing and disturbing of them all. Experienced woman, good horsewoman, long-time competitive trail rider on a good horse with a lot of trail miles. In our region, in the late summer, we're afflicted with yellow jackets, and they're a ground nesting, stinging insect. And if a horse steps on the entrance to one of those nests, they come out, they'll grab a hold of the horse, latch on, and stay there on the horse and continue to sting. And the brokest horse in the world will really get rattled by that. It's painful. I've been stung by them. And they don't stop stinging, and there's a lot of them. This gal was riding along a roadway. Horse stepped apparently in a yellow jacket nest. The yellow jacket swarmed on, stung the horse. The horse got agitated, understandably, whirled around, backed up, backed into an open box road culvert, a drainage culvert, flipped over on the rider under the culvert, or inside the culvert. She was wearing a helmet. Died of massive chest injuries. The reason why this one is so concerning to me is it points out that there are times when nobody does anything wrong, no matter how you write it down, and things can go very wrong. Nice horse, qualified rider, doing everything right, and circumstances conspired to create a terrible tragedy. So we have to be aware that sometimes combination of bad luck, if you want to call it that, and bad circumstances can have an enormous cost when we're dealing with these horses. The next fellow is a guy that I'd ridden some horses for, started a few colts for. He was active in the show world. He had his own barn. He had, as I do, a concrete center aisle. He had bought a real great old show horse who was quirky, and you had to know how to get along with him. And he was told, number one, don't tie this horse. Everybody thinks they can tie him. The last guy had him tied to a 2-horse trailer. He pulled the trailer over. So he was a pullback horse. The second thing don't do is don't lead him by the halter, because if he feels restrained and contained and confined like that, he's going to fly back. Well, my friend had him for a while. He worked with him a bit, did some things he thought might remedy this. Had to move him from one stall 12 feet to the next stall. Walked him out of the stall with a halter on with no lead rope. Horse hit the concrete. Something took his eye. He felt that restraint, pulled back, dumped my friend on his head from his own feet, not on the horse's back. Same scenario, terrible head injury combined with a spinal injury. Lived in the hospital for a more extended period of time, but did not make it home. So there is another scenario where things we all do can have a terrible price. The final one is very much along the same lines of the lady who was killed in the horse accident with the Yellow Jackets. This gal was in her late 30s, good horsewoman, beautiful rider, rode nice horses, was riding a horse in a prepared arena, a broke horse, a good horse. Horse was doing nothing wrong. There was no disagreement going on. She asked the horse to strike off on a lope, and for some unknowable reason, the horse misstepped, wasn't injured, just misstepped, went forward, pitched this lady off. She too struck her head. She too lived a short time in the hospital. So those are 5 folks who paid dearly for their involvement with horses, and perhaps for the consequences of some things that could have been done differently. Again, I would never think to judge any of these folks. They've already paid everything they had. I also am not going to get into the helmet controversy. Some people think they're ridiculous. Some people think they're indispensable. I will tell you that I would never tell anyone not to ride with a helmet, nor would I in any way ridicule somebody for riding with a helmet. And I think that kids, till they're able to make up their own mind, really should be required to wear helmets. But here I am in the same thing I ride in, and what I'm going to tell you folks is, so far in my 71 years of life, I've gotten lucky, I've been lucky, but there's no guarantee that's going to continue, and I recognize that. And I recognize that in part because of those 5 dead friends. So I'm not going to go there, but I will say that it's a legitimate question whether helmets shouldn't be more seriously considered by a lot of them who find them inconvenient or uncomfortable or one thing or another. As you look at these folks who were hurt, 4 of the 5 died from head injuries. Makes you think that is apparently the most common source of death-producing injury with horses, which makes sense. And in the horse world, there was a study done over in Great Britain, I believe, comparing the risks of motorcycling, skiing, biking, and horseback riding, and the per capita, in other words, say per 100 or 100,000 level of catastrophic head injuries was way higher in horse involvement than any of those other, I think, seemingly equally as risky undertakings. So certainly something to think about. the fact that if you're going to get hurt, it's very likely that it will be in the form of a bad head injury, at least if it's going to be catastrophic. So again, consider the fact patterns I just played out that cost people their lives in 5 cases. And please do your best not to be my 6th dead friend. Thank you.